The Wuhan virus came from a lab. This claim started as a fringe theory. But in recent months, the possibility of a lab leak has looked increasingly real. The world wants the Wuhan laboratory to be investigated, but China won't allow it. Today, China rejected the demand to investigate the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the same Wuhan lab that is at the center of the entire debate. China won't allow access to the lab. To be honest, this does not come as a surprise. China was opposed to the idea of another investigation the moment it was proposed. Today, we have received a formal confirmation, and China made the announcement in dramatic fashion. Chinese health officials called a press conference. They said that they were shocked and offended by the demand made by the World Health Organization. One of the top officials said that the World Health Body's plan shows disrespect for common sense and arrogance for science. Listen to this.
To be honest, when I first saw the WHO's plan for second-stage investigation of the COVID-19 origins, I was extremely surprised. This plan takes the hypothesis of China's violation of laboratory procedures, causing virus leakage as one of the research priorities. From this point, I can feel the disrespect for common sense and arrogance towards science revealed in this plan.
Such grandstanding. China says it has been offended by the demand for another investigation. It says the very idea of a lab leak, quote-unquote, disrespects science. What about the 4 million people who died due to the Wuhan virus? Isn't Beijing disrespecting these victims who were killed by the virus that came from China? Don't they deserve answers? China is doing everything it can to deny the world the truth about the pandemic. It began with the attempted cover-up in Wuhan, followed by a crackdown on critics and whistleblowers. This year, it oversaw a compromised investigation into the origins, one that called the possibility of a lab leak the least likely. That's what the WHO probe concluded. The lab leak is least likely. The world saw through Beijing's lies, though, and called China out for its lack of transparency. So how is China responding to all of this? With more lies, more conspiracy theories, and more propaganda. China has begun a new campaign to deflect blame for this pandemic. It is being executed in 3 steps. Step 1 is to deny all accusations against the Wuhan laboratory. Step 2 is to drum up international support for China's innocence. And step 3 is to deflect blame, push an alternative story on the origins. Now, you already know about step 1, how Beijing is pushing back against the lab leak, how it is not allowing anyone to go near the Wuhan lab. So let me tell you about steps 2 and 3. Step 2 is international support. Look at this report. It is from the Chinese state press. 55 countries submit joint letters to WHO opposing politicization of COVID-19 origin study. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued this statement earlier this week. Last week, these joint letters were delivered to the World Health Organization. Who signed these letters? Which 55 countries? Let me give you some names. Russia, Belarus, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Iran. Do you see the pattern? All of these countries have strong ties to China, and some of them a lot of debt from China. The report goes on to say that many countries, and I'm quoting, many countries spoke out for justice. They stressed that virus tracing is a scientific task and should not be politicized. The joint China-WHO study report published in March should be upheld. Basically, stick to the old report, don't ask for another probe, at least not on China. That's what the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs told the press. So they claim international support. If China is not to blame, then who is? That's step 3, find a new villain. Push an alternative version of events. China knows that just a denial will not help. It has to deflect blame. It has been trying to do this for weeks now. The target is America, the Fort Detrick lab in America, to be precise. China has been gunning for it. It says this is where the virus came from. On what basis? Well, China has offered no scientific evidence to substantiate this claim. It has only unleashed its diplomats to push it. Leading the charge is Zhao Lijian, spokesperson of the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, better known as the Wolf Warrior-in-Chief. Zhao Lijian was one of the first diplomats to float this idea. Today, he demanded that the next round of investigation into the origins of the virus should focus on the Fort Detrick lab in the US.
一段时间以来，国际社会 The international community, including China, has every reason to cast doubt on the Fort Detrick, which was notorious for laboratory violations and contaminant leaks, to demand clarification and explanation from the US and to call for a thorough investigation by the WHO. Such a request is not only for the origin tracing of COVID-19, but also for the safety of people's lives in all countries. The question will not end until the US side gives a reasonable explanation.
Zhao Lijian says an investigation into Fort Detrick is the quote-unquote call of the people. Who are these people? Chinese citizens, apparently. There's a petition doing the rounds in China. It demands an investigation into the Fort Detrick lab. More than 5 million Chinese citizens are said to have signed this open letter. Now, in countries like China, you see, activism is also controlled by the government. And this is how narratives are built, Chinese style. First, Beijing uses its mouthpieces to push a certain story, and once it gains traction with such signatures, the Chinese state uses the same narrative to conduct foreign policy. The Fort Detrick conspiracy has been part of a year-long campaign by the Chinese state to blame the US for the pandemic. Chinese diplomats themselves have used their presence on Western social media handles to push conspiracies about Fort Detrick. Last month, a Chinese diplomat tweeted this. He said that Fort Detrick lab must be investigated because there are a large number of pneumonia cases near the Fort Detrick lab. Again, no proof was offered to substantiate this claim. Chinese diplomats have been caught sharing information from suspicious accounts on social media. Earlier this month, the cultural counselor of the Chinese embassy in Pakistan shared a tweet that talked about the Fort Detrick conspiracy. The tweet came from a newly created anonymous account. This is behavior that is consistent with online bots. It's an attempt to build consensus for a conspiracy theory. China is now not only hiding the truth, it is actively working to create distractions. It is sabotaging the second possible investigation into the origins of the pandemic. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.